Let me know when y'all are ready for me to start.
Let's do this.
Are you going to face forward?
I'm not facing forward.
That's what I thought. It was a bit...
like kind of this.
Okay, cool. Right.
If you want to, you can speak to the camera.
I will do.
Because we're not hindered by fourth wall.
Okay. Hello and welcome back to the Ōkami podcast. This evening we're going to be discussing the topic of toxic masculinity versus the contemporary man. My name is Misha Duncan-Barry and I'm going to be the mediator for today. And I'm here with these fellow men that are going to be discussing this topic with me. If you'd like to introduce yourselves.
I'm Ed. I've been on these before. And yeah, we're going to talk.
I'm Drew. I've also been on these before. And we also have.
I'm Sid, long-time listener, first-time participant.
Perfect. Cool. So as I said, today's topic is toxic masculinity versus the contemporary man. So my first question for you lads is, what does toxic masculinity mean to you? How would you define it?
I'll go. Not that I have a specific definition for it, but I would describe it as leading your life as a man through rules and culture that you assume supposedly makes you manly.
Right.
That quite often is based off constant and, in my opinion, unnecessary various types of dominance.
Right.
And whether aware or not, also constantly carrying within yourself a fear that if you don't live up to these kind of standards, you're not really a man. Amongst other men.
Do you guys feel the same? Is that how you would define toxic masculinity?
I can see the sense in that.
I don't disagree.
Yeah.
Cool, okay. Cool. I think from my understanding, it's the idea that men feel they need to be, as you said, kind of dominant and almost overpower when they're in a space in order to feel comfortable or to feel safe. Would you guys agree, or is that your experiences with toxic masculinity?
Yeah, there's almost this sense of like trying to hold power. And usually around people it's holding power over people. Which comes with the dominance.
And do you think, is toxic masculinity a taught trait, or do you think it's something that is innate in men?
Taught or learned.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, if it's taught, it's learned. It's more like, is it inhabited? Or
Yeah. Is it innate in you, or is it something that men are taught and then learn?
I think there's maybe something natural in a man, biologically having a tendency towards doing things, and I'm completely talking out of my depths here, but reading and listening to podcasts about how there's this sense of trying to achieve things in a man that like ties in biologically with testosterone. And basically there's certain things of the way a man is that would how you channel them, essentially. I'm not talking sense. there's basically things biologically within a man that can lean that towards toxic masculinity. Like that's one way of expressing innate things there. I would argue essentially both.
It can be taught and it can be within men.
Yeah, like there's something that's already within men that can lean that way. Though there are certain societal things, cultural things, social ways of socializing that are taught that play on the already innate biological facilities.
That's why it's learned, because let's say the ways of how men express in some way is powerful in general. Same as it is, women have within their own ways, and then we have those that fully overlap and have nothing to do with, the sex, right? So it is taught/learned because what you do and for what reason, how you exhibit it, that's what it is. And it's the same as whether you're a superhero or a super villain is a choice, but the power is essentially the same. So which one have you been taught as? Let's say, are you being trained and or taught to use your potential physical strength to conquer? Or are you being taught to protect? That's where it starts. And then the more you do one and the more you are rewarded for one, so let's say being protective, that's what being a man is going to be for you. Or being understanding, or being whatever it is that, the environment has brought within you. Or vice versa. You're the one that's meant to be responsible for everything. Or you're the one that only gets to make decisions, or whatever. It is taught within you what is right and what is wrong. And then those natural urges, as you said, whether it be testosterone or many other hormones that, create a certain characteristic. It is the same as some of them we are taught to direct some places instead of others. So it is vice versa. We are not properly taught to harness, certain control over some others instead of allowing them to roam free. Because instead of being understood and addressed, because right now obviously we're leaning towards from praising certain traits to, shaming for them now. Hence, right now there's that, gray area why you were probably, struggling to explain what it is truly. Yeah, because nowadays it's hard to say what is toxic masculinity and what is just, expression of a male sex within the human species. Like, aggression isn't toxic. It's only toxic when it causes harm in a certain manner, in an oppressive manner towards something and is exhibited as or under the banner of men. But certain form of aggression is very, very necessary within this world for any organic being. That has nothing to do with the society. The society has found ways how to push it. Not to mention all the certain powers that women have. Like, look where it's led. Dangerous power within men was praised, hence had a chance to grow. Dangerous power within women, for example, possibilities of sway and thought where there's clear leniency towards higher, expression, has been shamed. Look throughout history, women have been kept from reading, kept from expressing sexually, kept from many things. Because what if they did it better than us? Right? So, yeah, very, very taught in my opinion. How consciously as a whole construct? I don't know.
Just
That was
going off that, in the idea that it could be taught, like, where is it taught or how is it taught? Is it through specific things that as young boys or men are told, or is it through the things that you see, or like where does that come from? Is it a pack thing of when you're around other men from your experiences? Where do you think this potentially comes from, or when do you identify it?
I think it might stem from instinct. and survival.
Mm.
Survival of the fittest. And if you want to find a mate and procreate, you would have to defeat other males in order to.
Yeah.
So I seem to think that it's like default settings, and you have to fit into society in that way and learn, almost unlearn
Yeah.
what's pre-programmed.
That's
In
quite
this new
interesting.
society.
Yeah.
That's the difference. Social norms have changed. Literally, 50 years ago, they were very different. Terms like toxic masculinity didn't exist. There was just masculinity. Any form of dominance expressed by a man was just manly and socially acceptable at the time. So I think it's really onto something in regards that now, because, as I said before, the scale is tipping so far, like, oppress. Now it's like, oh, well, what are we meant to do? So which parts of us can we still express, and which parts, are clearly harmful or not the healthiest in long term, because not everything has immediate impact either. So how can you tell, how far does it go? Like, let's say giving someone a compliment on the street. Since when all the compliments became catcalling?
I understand that, but I think linking that up, catcalling and giving a compliment are two different things. If I know you and I say to you, oh, Drew, I really like your t-shirt, that's a compliment I'm giving to someone that I know. Mm-hmm. If I'm a stranger and Drew's walking down the street and I shout and scream something at him and then turn around and laugh with all of my friends, that's catcalling.
Yeah, but this is the thing, let's say you're in a bus and someone's sat across, and as they're leaving the bus, they just say, I just had to say, but you're one of the most beautiful people I've ever seen.
That's a compliment, though, no?
I'd like to think so.
Catcalling,
but it can be interpreted as
thing.
Get away from me. Because there is this, that's probably a whole different conversation as to why are we so afraid of strangers.
I think that's definitely a different concept, though.
Next episode.
Maybe, but I think in relation to this, one of the things that you said that I want to kind of touch on is that idea of it being innate in men, and that idea of it comes from, similar to the animal kingdom, it comes from a place of protection, survival, being the strongest man and that sort of thing. So what do you think, as men now and as contemporary men, and we'll discuss kind of what that term also means for us, but as you've sort of said, is the innate place of where that originally came from, in this day and age where you don't have those immediate threats to survive in the same way, my question would then be, well then what is it that leads men to exhibit toxic behaviour now? Or what experiences have you had where you've seen that toxic behaviour?
I feel like the most classic example, and the way it always tends to evolve into almost its worst place, is when you have a group of men that struggle with communicating how they feel. And then an environment of a bunch of men like that, it seems to, like, the way they communicate with each other isn't necessarily truly a reflection of how they are. And then by being around each other, it seems to, like, almost like a virus, it turns into something else. And then when that is almost how the dynamic is between them is shown out of them, that's when it can become very toxic, aggressive, derogatory, insensitive, and that's when the toxicity starts to like really breed. And especially when those men find support in that environment, so they have a sense that they can be them, or they feel like the person that they are in that group is more of them than, let's say, what they are on their own. It almost like gives them a certain power, which then is channeled in a way that comes from insecurity. Yeah.
Do you guys feel the same? Does it come out when men are in packs, or is the other?
I strongly agree with that. It's it almost comes off as endearing when, like if they're not, if a group of men is not taking the piss out of you, they don't like you.
Wow.
So they, you're in as soon as they start ripping on you. Because they include you. If they exclude you, you know you're in trouble.
Right.
Maybe
But I
there's
think-
a certain acknowledgement of mental toughness. That, you know, like a pack of wolves, like we only accept those who will not be, you know, injured by our bites.
Right.
That something like that, probably.
It's quite interesting, you know.
I didn't
Going,
mean to interrupt you.
No,
That's okay.
I was going to say it's quite interesting thing going from that idea of it relating men to like how the animal kingdom does, where it's the physically strongest.
Mhm.
In relating that to, like, as you said, contemporary men, there it might not be the physical aspect, but it's the emotional and the mental thing of, can you handle this? Can you be in with us?
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like sometimes there can be a them and us when it comes to being in groups of men? A bit like packs, like if you're either us with us or you're them on the outside.
I'd argue that that's fair to say about any groups of people, especially insecure people.
Nothing to do with sex or gender.
Yeah, that's just, you get packs, you get cliques, you get groups, like that's how people form a sense of safety.
Yeah.
But some that are, let's say, more physical reasons for why a pack's together. Their way of expression might be more primal, hence whatever might be masculine or feminine, just running about in a sense of the more of it, the more you are something, not in a sense of how. It's not just channeled in a conscious manner, it's just expressed. And I think this is just a hypothesis, so no actual science behind this, but it seems to create some sort of reason in my mind. So both men and women have masculine and female characteristics, but also literally components within ourselves for both. And, you know, first, was it like a few days or 3 weeks or something like that? We are the same creature before. Essentially, all of us are women before some of us become men.
Mm-hmm.
So, let's say you have those traits, right? Well, masculine and feminine. But depending by default setting, depending on gender you might have, depending on sex, you might have a higher expression of one or the other, naturally. So essentially just proficiency, even if it just doesn't matter that it's a leniency of 60% of this, 40% of that, or whatever. Maybe it's just you're much more aware of this 50% than the other. Like, when you download the software or just get anything, some things already just make sense, right? Mm-hmm. And you pointed at something very significant in regards to the idea of isolation within groups, and that sparked the other question. Look at how the world runs. In the places that are most primal and aren't necessarily consciously pushing intellectual, emotional, spiritual, etc. boundaries, although those have it as well. We were very into separating sex. What started it at the point, like maybe it's part religion, maybe it's part culture, maybe there's other reasons, I kind of atone for that. But to observe we split prisons, bathrooms, classes, schools, a lot of places, and throughout history, the more you've split it up. Now what happens? You're a man in a group of just men. Even if some of you have a higher expression of feminine characteristics, you're nowhere near the majority. So literally the same as within biology and nature, generation after generation, if supported by social and cultural, investment, genetically what you create is men who express masculinity in a certain way. And the only way to balance it out is to teach it, what we addressed at the very beginning. So you need to spend a lot of time with women, which probably is one of those things why we don't normally fall. Not even, it has nothing to do with fall. Why all three of us, let's say as men, our spidey senses tingle when someone's behaving in a certain manner and calls it manly. You feel uncomfortable. Like, that it's like, you don't go like, yes, this is how men should be. Some things like, I don't know. Some of it is very aware and you're on top of it. But I do think that in a heavy way, it's because of all the women that have influenced us. Heavily. Because they taught us to see what we exhibit, but don't necessarily notice ourselves. And they also taught us to understand what it can do. What it means will change up depending on context. But the harm that it can do is reasonably universal. Especially if it is as simple as men versus women.
I think that's quite an interesting one, and that leads on to what I was going to ask next, which is, do you feel you can spot it in other men, or even in yourself? And when you do you feel comfortable to call that out?
That's interesting.
And not just like the personal you, but the you in general. Like, do you think men are comfortable when they see that being exhibited around them or in front of them? And if not, would you? Do you think men are comfortable to call that out if and when they do see it?
I think it would be difficult to do so. I see it often, and I always seem to think that it stems from insecurity. So where they are trying to make themselves look big, I actually see them smaller than they were.
You think it links back to the idea of protection then? Is that maybe why? Do you think
probably
it comes out?
You need to appear stronger than you actually are to survive.
Okay. Does it make other men, do you think, feel uncomfortable, or do you think it's that Lord of the Flies type thing of it empowers other men to join in? I think sometimes there can be a fine line between when it's like when something's fun and then it turns bad. Do you know what I mean? Like sometimes when everyone's doing something and then it's only as it goes on that it might hit, oh, actually, is this normal, as you sort of said, or is this something that would be seen as toxic?
I think it's something to do, and this is how I believe I recognize it within others, but also within myself. Because I'm sure there's more things that tick it for people, etc. But two words come to mind: fear and proof. Fear of not being accepted. Fear of being wrong. Fear of coming across weak, that is connected to the fact that you need to prove it for whatever reason. That's, I believe, one of the roots for toxic masculinity, where suddenly you need to prove what being masculine or manly is, as if there is a universal template. And it is usually provoked through fear that then creeps into pride and other things like that. Oh, you're a wuss, you can't do this, can you? Even you have done all this journey of, I don't need to prove anything to anyone. I don't care what people say about me. Like, I'm not even interested in this. But let's not lie. All three of us have taken something like, but I could just do it, couldn't I?
Yeah, just to prove.
like we are clearly so, not all of us and not all the time, but for whatever reason, we're so easily provoked.
Yeah.
Especially within the things that we don't understand. God forbid someone will find out that a man doesn't know something or doesn't understand something. What will happen then?
Which really, I guess, leads me to then ask, do you think, or can you think, or do you feel like there's ever been times when you've exhibited toxic masculine behaviour? And if so, what environment maybe caused you to exhibit that?
Where do we start?
Like, you think about from boyhood to teenagehood to adulthood, there's so many different stages, but like
anything and everything you can think of
Yeah,
stereotypically
literally.
at some point.
like wow.
Like the whole concept you've got of the animal kingdom where like the weak are preyed upon. I remember a time, I told you this recently in the park, where like I was bullied in school, and same as most people. Like you're either bullied or you bully, to some regards. It's not as black and white, but still. I remember being in a classroom at one point, and we were sat in there on the computers, me and a bunch of people that I considered friends at the time. And one of my friends, one of the people that had been there at a point of transition where like I didn't know anyone closely, he came into the classroom and people started making jokes towards him, and he was very like almost submissive to it. He wasn't trying to like bite back, or he was quite sensitive in himself, even though he would play it off with humour. And for whatever reason that day I decided to join in with the jokes, and this is someone I considered a friend, but like for whatever reason I felt like I wanted to take charge of that moment and be the top dog or the big dog, and started making jokes that I knew would provoke, but I didn't know where they would go, but I knew they would provoke. And then once I said something, it was like fuel to the fire. It's like a firecracker. Then other people start chipping in, and it just starts building. And before it feels like any time has passed, this guy's left the classroom. His sister comes in and tells us he's been crying and like broke down from it, and like shit hit the fan essentially. And that all kind of happened in such a short space of time, from what was thought to be by most people as just banter. Especially because it was all the people in that room are all people that had been bullied as well.
Wow.
And there's that sense of like trying to get power back, feeling insecure and wanting to prey on someone that can make you feel better about yourself by just having jokes and whatnot. But you do that to each other, but then there's always that one person that doesn't throw jokes back and doesn't necessarily have a wall to protect themselves against this kind of thing.
So we are back.
Concentrate. Magic of editing.
So my question to you guys then would be, do you think there's pressure on men to live up to a certain standard or perception of what it means to be masculine or manly, especially in this day and age compared to previous generations?
It's changing.
Yeah. I would argue yes, because there is also something I watched recently where Jordan Peterson was talking about women and what they desire instinctually. And there is this very primal thing of like getting with the other sex and procreation and the biological wiring towards that. And he was speaking about essentially again the reference to the animal kingdom, about how in the animal kingdom it is the alphas, the like top dogs, the whatever it is, that are the ones that get a chance to procreate. And there's something in that of like what we mimic and trying to be the most desirable, the most attractive, and then also the survival of surviving in a alpha space.
Yes, for the same.
Then in that sense, there's, although yes, I said that it's changing, and it's changing in a way that there's, and maybe that's what, partially, although I do think contemporary man is slightly more than that, beyond that, but I'm sure we'll get there. But there's new areas or new ways in which you can excel. And excelling at something provides you with success. Success leads to some form of power, which leads essentially, let's say from the perspective of a mate, it doesn't even matter male or female. You can provide and protect and support and do a lot of things like that. So, and when I say there's other ways to excel, it's no longer just physical brawn or just money. There is other ways, like especially now that look through all those apps, through just in general, what you listen to conversations, etc. I am looking for an intellectual. I'm looking for someone who has taste for art. I'm looking for someone who's traveled well, etc. So you can take off a lot of different boxes or even areas in general. But there's one, and I think that's why it's never really changing. And maybe that's why it's so primal, as you pointed out, how alpha isn't, for the lack of a better term, alpha isn't necessarily the strongest or the wisest or the most experienced, none of those. Alpha is the one who's respected the most. And that's what we fight for. And although it's not about achieving necessarily, there's only one spot at the top for a singular person to be fully respected by everybody, because I think it's ever changing. But if we're climbing up there, we can't be paying attention only to those that climb. We also have to pay attention to those that remain or fall. So what it creates is this pressure of no disrespect. And so respect is such a subjective thing in general, but for whatever reason, again, we seem to have this perception as if there's certain ways how you can disrespect someone, right? Mm-hmm. Calling out, not doing something, not exhibiting certain form of strength or dominance, yada, yada, yada. But it is about that respect where my partner shouldn't be someone that allows himself or me to be disrespected. And for whatever reason, allowing disrespect, like amongst those things, is also not taking action in some form of dominance. If you allow in whatever way yourself or whoever you are associated with to be dragged in whatever manner, even if it is your fully, the peaceful warrior way, for yourself as an individual, easy. Well, not necessarily. Easy in a sense, simple but not easy. Mm-hmm. All you need to do is keep stripping back, etc. And as long as you're not necessarily physically damaged, you can actually become a very self-sufficient individual that probably isn't playing silly games like sex and gender. Silly only implying that you're creating extra turmoil for no need. But when you're involved with others, if you want to play this game with everyone else in this sandbox we call Earth, other people might have their own perception of what's disrespect. And then you try to please and appease. And again, you are lost in this game, trying to be something or someone you think you should be, instead of just being who you are. I feel like I went on a bit of a tangent there.
Just a little bit. But actually, and I'll open that question up to you guys, especially using the term contemporary men. And firstly, do you associate yourself with that term? Do you relate to it in any way, shape or form? And actually, do you feel that men of this generation, and by that I mean from millennials onwards, do you feel that you have more of a grasp and a concept of what toxic masculinity is compared to previous generations? And do you feel that you are more aware of how to navigate that behaviour? Or do you think it's just a personal journey, one-on-one? It's not something that, as a generation, is grasped? So I feel, from my understanding, as a young person now, I feel that I have conversations about things from gender to race to sexuality to age in a way that my mother's generation and previous to her never did. Mm-hmm. I think we're far more open and conscious of what's going on in the world around us and actually who we are and how we relate to other people. Do you feel that's the same in regards to men, and specifically talking about the behaviours that men exhibit? Everybody gone quiet on me? And I don't think there is like a one-way answer, but I don't know. What do you guys think or feel?
What if it's more of a question of what's contemporary now? And I know it's like a wordplay, because contemporary is modern of the now, but it's more in a sense of throughout history there has been some form of what contemporary man means, even if the term didn't exist. So this was at any point some group of men that was going potentially some group of people in general, not necessarily men. You know, since men can be feminists, women can be, you know, with a modern male, you know, perspective, fully aware and invested in it. So very randomly, but let's say, when it came to knights, there's probably many different types of, but let's say, for the bladeness of black and white, there were brutal knights, or certain cultures that exhibited power of a warrior through just pure expression of dominance and ruthlessness. And then there are other cultures where things like honor and chivalry were pointed out, right? So as you go through history, at different times, probably different things, you know, made you think, this man's different. Like, he's still great in some manner, but he's not exhibiting, you know, the kind of characteristics that we're used to. So maybe the question is, what's trending right now? What it is that right now is perceived by the suffering party or the observing party as the most expressive step in the opposite direction from just what, because the way of being toxic in a masculine way, like, that hasn't changed much though. Like, it's always when you overdo your physical strength, when you overdo your verbal expression in a derogatory manner that isn't mindful whatsoever. Sounds like an idea. Right? And yeah, so thoughts? Like, I'm just blabbering here I can create this construct that I have no answers. I just see some shit.
Okay, well then, to put a spin on that question then, I would ask, what lessons have you guys learned, or what things do you think that you hope men take into the future with them? That's either like lessons they can learn about how to navigate behaviours, or what would you want to pass on to the next generation of men in regards to what you've learned or experienced?
Learn about your own masculinity and the things that come with masculinity, and embracing femininity. Which plays a big part of self-awareness. But also just like awareness of like what other people have studied, like the science behind it, because there are certain things that are just, they might show up differently in each person, but there's a one through line between that it all comes from a similar place. So learning, to reiterate, learning about masculinity and embracing feminine aspects of personality.
I see it as I've had to assemble a set of tools to deal with toxic masculinity when I see it. I don't know how you can teach that other than being in the room and experiencing it. I can't write that down because you need to experience it, because your feelings can get hurt, and if you let yourself get hurt and you're perceived as weak, it can just snowball from there.
Pull you in.
But it doesn't end. I mean, it starts when you're at school. Like, even like nursery. I remember being thrown over a sofa by two kids in this nursery class, and I got up like I didn't even know what up, which way's up. I didn't even, and that stuck with me since then. It's like they laughed and felt good about it, and then you take that experience and you take it to school, and then you take it to work, and then I mean it is just survival. You need to know how to deal with it.
I think that's a really great thing, and what you said there about one of your things would be to encourage the next generation to embrace their femininity. Do you feel that that's something that is openly encouraged towards men? Or do you feel it's something that men feel safe to explore?
It's not even safe. I think it's... I'm sure some men, might be afraid to look into what their feminine side might be. And some have never thought about it, but probably a lot, not necessarily, but I think we need to, because that's what is given to me, so I imagine that, because the question initially was, what is it that you've learned or taken on that you wish you could pass, right? So, learn the value of balance and equality. It's not just that's the thing, it's gonna be a snowball effect, as you said, but in a very good way that it will sort out yourself, it will sort out also society and everything else. But as an example, let's say truly, it's not about just equal rights. It's about equal responsibility. That no single task or role in any matter, by any definition, is meant for someone based on their gender or, belief or skin color, etc. Like, that's that point, because we keep running these, narratives, and why it's important, because it's a lesson that I still keep learning. Now going into world in a way of independence, of post, all the training, learning, graduation, yada yada yada. Hunting for work for a while, being in a relationship, living in a household. Imagine the benefit that it would have physically, psychologically, spiritually, etc. when, for both men and women, when man no longer was by definition assumed as a provider or as the protector or all these things. What makes you qualified to be those things? One thing. Two, why do you need to be all of those things? Why do you need to be all of those things all the time? And if you are all those things, straight away two things are created. You will never give an opportunity for anyone else that's excluded to show that they might be better at just as good, or just in general they can do it. And vice versa. You're constantly living under a certain perception that you're not enough. Because all these games of constantly being on top means that the grind never ends. And you're not even grinding for yourself. You are grinding to maintain the image of what people that are defined as you, whether biology or society or whatever else, rules of other games, are meant to be. It's like playing a game. You get to choose of class, race, class, specification, etc. But even within that, there's only certain templates of what you could be looking like. And then when we play games where you can fully customize, look how excited we get. Because that's what all of us want to be, just our own version of what we think we could be. So that's that lesson, you know, all summarized. Why let anyone else define who you are meant to be if you're the only one that actually has to live your life? Still a lesson that we're learning. But.
Yeah. I think those are quite interesting things that you've all said about what you would, I guess, pass on if it's, you know, to live your life and try to just be yourself and to experience what the negative or toxic masculine experience is, so you can then create the tools for yourself to be able to navigate and survive within that, as well as being open and free to explore who you are and not being afraid to explore not just your masculine side but your feminine side. I think all three of those things are great things that should be passed on to the next generation. So with that in mind, I guess my final question would be, looking back on yourself and your younger self, what one piece of advice would you give to your younger self about how to navigate growing into manhood and the challenges that can bring? You know, that can be a hard one, because when I think about what piece of advice I would give to my younger self, knowing now the challenges that I would go through as a woman, for me it's not comparing myself to other women and not saying
literally what I was thinking, yeah.
What womanhood is or how a woman should sort of be. And also it's okay to feel pain and be upset by things and not to try and fight them. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like, tears are not a weakness, I think. At least from a female perspective, I know this is outside of maybe the male one, or I don't know, maybe men can relate to that too, but the idea of like, women are always, or at least you're taught, women are seen to be weak and hysterical, and tears equals a woman being weak and hysterical, so don't do that. Whereas if I could talk to my younger self now, I'd just be like, feel what you're feeling, and it's okay to say no, and it's okay to stand up for yourself, and that doesn't mean that you're being selfish. It means that you are just choosing yourself, and that's, I guess that would be me from my perspective. But based on obviously this topic that we've been discussing, I guess what advice would you give to your younger self about navigating manhood, knowing what you now know?
You can't be a victim and an oppressor. And in that, there's a power in courageous vulnerability. And it's okay to be vulnerable. If anything, there's a power in that. But vulnerability and victimhood is not the same thing.
I would tell myself to try harder to resist the temptation to not be who I think I am. So, since I met the best friends I think a person could have, I actually feel like I can be vulnerable and not be it's a safe space. I don't have to worry about how masculine I appear around people. It's a big relief to find people that you can be safe with. Because there are spaces that you end up in where you are not safe, and you need to put on that front. And vulnerability isn't really an option. So I suppose maybe I exercise toxic masculinity very often, but it's in a it's survival. Because I know that if I am the odd one out, I am automatically the weakest in the herd.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess that begs the question of, is there a way that you can, or men in general, can navigate those spaces without having to exhibit toxic masculinity themselves? I guess that links back to, is there ever a time where you are comfortable to call that out when you're in those spaces, knowing that you could be the only person to call it out? And also, could other men be feeling what you're feeling because no one's saying it? It's like all it takes is one person to say it for other people to be like, oh, actually, yeah. Or is it the opposite? Is it safety in numbers kind of thing? Maybe it could, lend to both.
You need to find, if you intend to be part of this game, aka society, in some manner, you can't resign from all the rules. Because then, although in some manner being a victim, and it is to a certain extent, is a psychological perception, because you can change that. But what is it that you're willing to pay and do to change that, right? Because, we have barriers of morals and perceptions and all these things. But if you're playing the game of, you can call it power, dominance, wits, whatever it is, if you have no intention of gaining power and isn't to dominate, but to be self-sustainable or to be able to protect yourself, as you say, to survive, it isn't necessarily to kill everyone else. Maybe it is to be strong enough so that no one dares to come near you. But there's different ways how you can exhibit this strength. And although not necessarily specifically, this doesn't apply necessarily just to men, but let's say from an immigrant's perspective. If I can outspeak anyone in the room, I will never feel weak, no matter what their culture might be like. And the more attention I pay, and the more I listen and learn, because that's that thing. I can always blab so much about everything that I already have within me, but then it's just one force against another. But following up, you mentioned Jordan Peterson. He said the best way to ever win an argument, if there is such a need, listen fully, everything to whatever someone's delivering, and then present it back in a concise manner. Is this what you meant? In that moment, they have nothing else to do towards you, especially if you can make them realize that they don't understand their own thing. And then that group mentality will turn very easily. It's like Tai Chi. Redirect the flow. You don't need to hit back with the same strength. You just shift it someplace else. And once you can learn that, you will be faced with level 2 of toxic masculinity. When we go from the physical and cultural level to the intellectual one. Are you going to be smart enough not to now attack them that way because power has shifted? Are you going to become the oppressor, as you say, because you can't be the victim and the oppressor? So that's where it's your responsibility when you gain that power to always keep it at control. That's why, once again, Jordan Peterson said, you don't want weak men. Weak men do dangerous things. And strong men aren't tamed men. Strong men are beasts that constantly keep it at the bay. But if need be, and needs occur, you gotta keep it there. That's why, I understand, why, and that's not necessarily the means by which you have gotten here in regards to being able to take on toxic men. But I understand the need. Because, and it's not even a need for you as individually. You were asking, how to change this. That's how you change it. You acquire equivalent power through means of redirection. And then bit by bit, you teach and educate. And you hope that one day they will listen Because if you force it, then what makes you any different? Then you're at square one again, just with different issues.
Well, that's an interesting place to leave it. Thank you so much, guys. That is the end of Toxic Masculinity vs Contemporary Men. See you on the next episode of Ōkami, but thank you for watching
Whichever
and joining
camera's
us.
still-
Whichever camera's still on. I know
That one's off.
These two are still on, but no. Thank you for sharing and discussing, and I hope it's been a safe space for you to share. And thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Ōkami Podcast.
And
See you next time.
Thank you for watching me eat crisps for an hour.
You are a hungry boy.
That's what I
Literally.
said when putting this.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Boom. I'm making a chickpea and aubergine curry for dinner. Do you like that?
Yes.
It's like the green ones, just
Sorry.
this all.